This is the Daily Tech News for Friday, January 17th, 2025. We tell you what you need to know, follow up on the context of those stories, and help each other understand.
Today, Mandy from Limo tells us about their robotic lawnmower, and Lamar Wilson has some advice for the TikTokers.
I'm Tom Merritt.
I'm Huyen Dow.
Let's start with what you need to know with the big story. It's TikTok again. I'm sorry. The short version of the latest in the TikTok saga is that the U.S. Supreme Court ruled narrowly against it. Not a big surprise. The law requires a block on the distribution of the service in the U.S. to go into effect on Sunday, January 19th. The court says that will stand. Now it's up to whether the president is going to issue an optional 90-day extension or something else is going to happen. Like, I don't know, ByteDance selling TikTok in the next 2 days. First, let's talk about what the decision said, and then we'll talk about what could happen next and some of the fallout. The court ruled narrowly. I actually read the decision. It's in very plain language that TikTok's First Amendment rights were not abridged, mostly because the law itself is content neutral. The law is concerned with data collection and algorithm construction, not the content on TikTok, not direct speech. The court noted that ByteDance even had the option of divesting, so it's not like they left them without an option. It might not be an option that ByteDance likes, but there's something they could do, so it's not full suppression of the speech. And the court noted that there still could be an undue burden on the speech of the 170 million users if ByteDance didn't divest and got blocked. But in the court's opinion, Congress's concerns about security outweigh that burden because users have other platforms and other options for expression, and ByteDance didn't bring enough evidence to convince the court that Congress's, quote, well-supported security concerns were unfounded. So the court deferred to Congress's expertise in the matter. The decision was made narrowly on this particular case, so it's not really meant to be a precedent for other cases. The opinion was per curiam. That means it was issued on behalf of the entire court. It was unanimous, though we did get concurrences written by Justices Sotomayor and Gorsuch. So what hope does TikTok have left? A bill from Senator Ed Markey to extend the deadline by 270 more days has failed to get approval because it was blocked in part by Senator Tom Cotton. Outgoing President Biden's administration officials have indicated they're unlikely to enforce the law, but will not issue a 90-day extension. Basically, they said, it's the weekend. We're not going to work on the weekend to enforce the law. But it doesn't seem at this point like they were going to find legal basis to issue that extension. Incoming President Trump said, "My decision on TikTok will be made in the not too distant future, but I must have time to review the situation." He spoke with Chinese President Xi Jinping on Friday, and the topic of TikTok was discussed. We don't know what they said, but they talked about it. Incoming National Security Advisor Michael Waltz told Fox News that the administration will
put measures in place to keep TikTok from going dark.
And he told ABC News, President Trump has been very clear. Number one, TikTok is a great platform that many Americans use and has been great for his campaign and getting his message out. But number two, he's going to protect their data. He's a deal maker. Waltz also said, I don't want to get ahead of our executive orders, but we're going to create this space to put that deal in place. Those are a lot of words that sound like they want to save TikTok. Also, TikTok CEO Shou Chew is expected to attend the inauguration on Monday. The law only requires Apple and Google to stop distribution, not block the service. It does also seem to require Oracle to stop providing access to U.S. user data, which it stores, an odd result of a law which is premised on the fact that U.S. user data is not under a U.S. company's control. However, ByteDance could leave TikTok working. There are ways that it could do that. But even if it does, you wouldn't get updates to the app. So over time, it would probably just stop working eventually. It has indicated, though, that it's going to shut down entirely in the U.S., saying things like it wants to protect its partners from liability. You could use VPN to go get the app from another market, though Apple and Google might class it as an illegal app, and they have some tools they use to prevent users from using VPNs for things like gambling apps, and they could try to stop you from accessing TikTok using a VPN that way. You could sideload the app on Android, not on iOS, though, unless you jailbreak your OS. Most people won't do any of that. Instead, they're probably just going to switch to another app. A few million US users have started using RedNote. We've talked about that previously on the show. TikTok is encouraging people to use its non-banned app Lemon 8 with a number 8 at the end. And Huyen, the Chinese domestic version of TikTok, now lets users register for an account with an international phone number. That's new, but you will still need to prove your identity. That's Chinese law, and it's not available in app stores in many regions, including the United States. Most, however, will probably just turn to Instagram and YouTube Shorts. Whatever happens is going to happen before Sunday. Any actions from the executive branch, we're waiting for this Supreme Court decision to help shed light on what legally can be done. They wanted to see what the Supreme Court said before they acted. My friend Justin Robert Young believes the Biden administration is going to suddenly acknowledge serious talks about divestments and then certify that to Congress and issue a 90-day extension. So if that happens, Justin gets to say, I called it. That would expose the administration to accusation that they didn't meet the law's requirements for the extension, but they're off the job as of Monday morning. So the whole thing would then get pushed into the next administration's hands, and they've been saying nice things about TikTok. I think when there's a 32% chance that ByteDance shuts down TikTok. But there's a better chance that something happens this weekend to delay the shutdown, and we get a few more weeks of negotiations before ByteDance concedes a few more items and retains control of TikTok, but puts more of its operations in the hands of USDS. That's the U.S. company which handles U.S. user data and stores it on Oracle servers. We'll have to check back Monday and see for sure. But how are you feeling about this?
Oh gosh, I am just confused. And as an app developer, I'm lucky that I've never had to work at a company that this level of Sturm und Drang is happening. But it just seems very confusing. And I think I'm not personally a TikToker. Just let's put that out there. But I do feel there's a little bit of odd. This just feels like, again, as a kind of lifelong technology person, technologist, whatever you want to call it, just feels kind of like we got ourselves kind of concerned about certain things. We didn't quite understand the entire problem, but we're going to do something about it. And now we're kind of realizing that our actions have consequences. And, who's going to be paying the toll for those consequences. And I just think it's very confusing. And it is really interesting because I think it plays into a little bit of what I worry about every day is like, well, in the event of something like this happening where someone says, stop doing that or stop doing that particular thing in your business, what does that mean for the technology side of it? What does that mean for like the kind of social aspect of like, where do people go? How do, a large base of people migrate from something that you've told them instantly, like, well, you can't use that anymore. So I do think it'd be interesting to see like what the usage patterns are, but I'm just really confused. I'm a little dismayed. And I do think that this was all, I'm an app developer. I think all this is rather silly, but you can say that I'm biased because of my day job, but it just seems like a lot of back and forth. And it just seems like at this point, nobody actually wants to do it, but no one wants to be the person responsible for saying, never mind, TikTok was fine all along. It's like no one wants to be holding that bag.
Right.
So
I suspected when this bill first became law 9 months ago that it was a play for older voters. But that's a little bit of failing the marshmallow test of like, great. So you got your older voters. Yeah. Now you don't have a marshmallow to eat because you already ate your marshmallow. So what do you do now? And I think everybody's like, we'll figure that out later. That's a problem for 9 months from now, me. And now 9 months from now, me is like, can we get an extension? Can we do this? Can we do that? There are some people who really do believe that TikTok is a security threat and are still pushing against that, like Senator Tom Cotton. Yes. This could have gotten a 270-day extension by a voice vote if Tom Cotton hadn't blocked that voice vote from happening in the Senate. So we had a test case of this. India full-on banned TikTok, not even just banned distribution, but said you can't, as an ISP, connect people to TikTok. So VPNs would be the only way you would even get to TikTok. There was a little bit of a scramble once that happened, but people just ended up going to a couple of domestic options, but mostly to YouTube and Instagram.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. Is that I think that at the very best, there is legitimate concerns with data privacy and, to some extent, espionage, if you will. And those are valid concerns. And I think the general public is much more conscientious of them in 2025 than they were, like, say, 10 years ago. But I think at worst, it's a little bit disingenuous just because that concern of data collection, data harvesting, at the we'll say quote unquote best option in terms of like, harvesting user data for profit with or without their knowledge, to the, let's call it worst case of like using, user data for kind of like broader, espionage, more kind of nefarious purposes. I think it all feels disingenuous because those are issues anyway with domestic companies, maybe not the espionage part, but the rest of it. So it just feels like a really interesting hill for people to want to die on, that this particular company, and this particular possible invasion of data privacy and, like ownership is where we are spending so much time and effort and kind of legal governmental like back and forth. And yeah, I mean, I just find it kind of odd. It reminds me a lot of times, like with EU decisions, like the EU has like, let's say the best of intentions, but there seems to be a gap in like the actual practical, pragmatic effects of, okay, we want to stop this bad thing from happening. How do we do that? But there's a gap in, say, that intention and the actual kind of effective solutions to make that bad thing happen, instead of like trying something and then all these really weird ancillary things happen. And, that didn't actually really solve the thing in the first place. But hey, here's the world we live in now. So everybody could go use shorts and reels instead.
The unintended consequences.
The unintended consequences. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, no doubt it's worth reminding folks like you are that this is about hurting China. The United States mostly wanted to just say, China, you've got the most successful social media app out there right now, and we don't like that. So we're going to pull one of your biggest markets. That is a main motivation here. There may also be security concerns. I find it interesting that ByteDance might pull the plug, so you won't be able to find out if they can easily copy your data out of Oracle should they need to keep this going, which would be what they would have to do. You won't be able to see whether that will work or not. But the argument is, because all U.S. user data from TikTok is on Oracle servers run by an independent company called USDS, that TikTok doesn't have control of that. I would like them to leave the service on and then Oracle say, well, we're not allowed to provide the data, and then see what would happen. But of course, they're not going to do that. But I'd be curious. I'd be curious how well it worked if suddenly, how much of my US user data is really only on those Oracle servers or not. But like I said, when we talk on Monday, I have a feeling we're going to be talking about how TikTok survived the weekend. We'll see. We'll see. DTNS survives the weekend every weekend because of our listeners. Thanks to all of you, including Philip Less, Howard Yarmish, John Atwood, and we got brand new patrons, James, Patrick, Christopher, Jovan, and Kevin. Welcome in all the new patrons. Good to have everybody along. There's more we need to know today. Let's get to the briefs.
Apple released iOS 18.3 Beta 3 to developers on Thursday, and among the changes are the removal of Apple Intelligence notification summaries for the news and entertainment categories. There's also some labeling that the summary feature is in beta, and there are some easier ways to disable notification summaries. So while the summaries are largely accurate, nobody seems to really love them, and there have been a few instances of them being just wildly wrong with certain news stories.
Yeah, I don't feel like it's very Apple-y to just add a beta tag to something like that.
That is so weird. This is just like a mea culpa, or hey, we're still working on like WIP, work in progress. Don't look behind the curtain, like kind of thing. It's just fascinating.
I know those inaccurate news summaries, like from the BBC or that someone was dead that wasn't get all the headlines. But for me, they're just not very useful. I look at those summaries and I'm like, yeah, that's not telling me much of anything.
Yeah, I have the same feeling in regards to summaries. And also, I think even with regular old notifications and headlines, generally, it's just a way for you to kind of be aware that something is happening and then jump into and get to the meat of it with the actual news story. So having somebody summarize something for me really is just an extra step, an extra step of like information that I have to parse. Do I care about this? Yes. Okay. Now I'm going to go to like where the actual article is.
Yeah, I have to think like, oh, is that summarizing it incorrectly, before I decide whether to accept the summary of a very small thing that was kind of a summary in the beginning. It's weird. The U.S. Federal Trade Commission accuses General Motors of selling aggregated data from OnStar users containing users' precise geolocation data and other driving behavior information without giving adequate notice to consumers. This is different than what the New York Times found. The New York Times found that they were selling individual information to insurance companies. Still, whether the New York Times is accurate or not, the FTC has ordered GM to stop selling data to consumer reporting agencies for 5 years. So that data won't be going there anyway. GM must also get affirmative express consent from users to collect any vehicle data at all and give clear abilities for customers to obtain and delete the data that it collects. That order is subject to a standard 30-day comment period before it goes into effect. So it's not happening today, but in 30 days it probably will.
And that's not all the FTC is up to. It's also requiring web hosting company GoDaddy to implement HTTPS APIs and require multi-factor authentication for its employees and customers, among other security practices. The requirements must be met to settle some charges that it did not properly secure its hosting services against attacks in 2018. GoDaddy has suffered several breaches since then, including most recently in December 2022, when attackers accessed source code and installed malware on compromised servers.
Yeah, malware or malware. I don't want it.
No. And wow, talk about low-hanging fruit in terms of HTTPS APIs and multi-factor authentication for GoDaddy.
Right?
Like, that's shocking.
You needed the FTC to tell you to, okay.
And also, it's a web hosting company, like a foundational piece of this whole internet thing that we do and use every day. That's just amazing.
The United States signed an agreement that will let it launch satellites from Norway's Andøya spaceport. The U.S. recently signed agreements with the U.K. and Australia along those lines as well, as it seeks a diversity of locations to launch from. These satellites probably were going to go up from Cape Canaveral if they didn't go from other countries, but it does get rid of the need to rely on the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan, which is operated by Russia.
Nintendo pressured several organizations to stop offering emulators of Nintendo systems last year without going to court. But in a panel at the Tokyo Esports Festa earlier this week, patent attorney and deputy general manager of Nintendo's intellectual property department, Koji Nishiura, agreed that emulators are, wait for it, completely legal. He did note that if an emulator circumvents copyright on games or directs users to find pirated games, that is illegal. But the emulator itself is not against the law.
This is, everybody, including Android Authority, is out there like, so you admit it. And Nintendo's like, yeah, but we're still going to issue a takedown notice, and you're still not going to want to take us to court. So
absolutely.
Yeah. But it's a moral victory. A couple of battery stories today. Ars Technica has a great article on a paper from Chinese and German scientists describing a way to make lithium sulfur batteries. Those batteries can be much more lightweight, but had problems holding a charge. The scientists have solved the charge problem. They can even do fast charging by using a solid electrolyte and some iodine. You can read the write-up on Ars Technica if you want the details, but the result is that there is a battery that still has 80% of its capacity after more than 25,000 charge-discharge cycles. And if that means nothing to you, your lithium-ion battery tends to go down to 80% capacity after about 1,000 cycles. So this thing has 25 times as much life in a way of looking at it. The downside, though, is that the solid electrolytes may make it heavier than lithium ion rather than lighter. They didn't use the weight of the full mesh that they're using in the electrodes in their paper. So we only know how much the sulfur adds to the weight. So we'll see if they can make this scale, like with all battery tech. Meanwhile, Bloomberg has an article about the progress being made in adding battery storage to electrical grids to help increase the utility of solar and wind power and prevent blackouts. China leads with 33 gigawatts of storage, followed by the U.S. with 19.4 gigawatts and Germany with 8.4 gigawatts. Just for scale, 30 gigawatts can power approximately 10 million homes.
It's all about them batteries, y'all.
Yeah.
The Pew Research Center estimates that 26% of U.S. teens use ChatGPT to help them with their schoolwork, up from 13% in 2023. So to put that another way, 73% of teens say they have not used ChatGPT to help them out with schoolwork. And just to clarify, 79% of teens have heard of ChatGPT. So it's not like they just don't know that it exists. They're just not using it. But interestingly, there's a little bit difference in terms of 31% of Black and Hispanic teens said they have used ChatGPT versus 22% for white teens.
That's new compared to the last time they surveyed it.
Yeah,
that's
it's different. Will change.
A couple other things here. Apple launched a new version of the Apple Store app specifically for India on Friday. That lets Indian shoppers customize their purchases for things like memory and storage and arrange for delivery or pickup. And that's important for many reasons, including the fact that India is the planet's second largest smartphone market.
Lenovo will buy Israel's enterprise storage startup Infinidat. This will be Lenovo's first major acquisition in Israel. Lenovo says it will convert Infinidat into a development center specializing in data management for large organizations.
All right, folks, those are the essentials for today. Let's dive a little deeper in some ongoing stories. Do some follow-up.
So last week at CES, Tom got to talk to Mandy Xie, the chief scientist and co-founder of Limo, and how their autonomous lawnmower is different than others.
I'm here with Mandy from Limo One. This is a autonomous lawnmower, right? But it's a little different than others people may have seen. Tell me about it.
Yeah, so this one is the first robotic lawnmower that does mulching. So it has the rotary motion blade, just like the traditional lawnmower. It has the same performance, but only this one is intelligent. You can just set it up and forget about it. It will just do everything on its own. So it doesn't, you can see from here.
Right. It doesn't need a bag. It
doesn't need a bag. It has it mulches the grass, and a pair with a high-speed fan. It can distribute the
it can go upstairs.
Yep, with the truss. So
it's got
truss is so powerful. It can climb hills and any terrain that you can see with like the holes of branches or anything on your lawn. You don't need to worry.
How does it not
stuff.
Cut the branches and hurt the blade?
So for the large ones, it wouldn't cut it. But for the small branches, it will cut it, but it won't hurt the blade because the blade is a very stiff stainless steel. Gotcha. Very tough one. And this thing is smart. It can avoid obstacles. Like you can see, it can go all the way down. So the YouTuber did a stress test all the way down to a hot dog. And that's why it's very safe.
So I noticed it goes over some things and not over other things. How does it know the difference?
It depends whether you want it to do it or not. So for something, you want to protect it. So you want to go avoid it. Like you have a pot in the yard for decoration.
Sure. You don't want it chopping that up.
That's right. You can just customize the label.
So you teach it.
You teach it. We already have a very large database, but sometimes you do want to customize it so that it just does whatever you want it to do. Like for a dog food, you don't
want that one spinning out.
That's right.
So teach it to go around instead of over.
But for sometimes people have like pine trees or fruit trees. You will have some apples or pine cone drop off the lawn. That way you don't care about it. So you want to just chop it up. So a lot of times for other robot, the user have to clean it up for the robot in advance so that it wouldn't either hurt the blade or getting stuck.
Right.
But ours, you don't need to worry about it because they can just handle that.
How is it? How do the sensors work? What kind of cameras and vision do you have sensors?
Mm-hmm. So this one is paired with a 2 camera at the front and 5 ultrasonic radar sensor all around the robot.
Okay.
That's and also a boundary system at the front. This is a 3-layer safety guarantee. So the robot will see the object way in advance with the camera, and then when it gets closer, like a robot, when you're standing on the side of the robot, the radar, the ultrasonic radar can detect it. It can also be safe. But even if all the sensors missed it, the boundary can still get it. When it just slightly hit it, and then it will just
go.
Of course, and there is a stop button, which is an emergency stop.
Okay.
If it is getting to anywhere you don't want to, and you just press it and then shut everything down.
So you have to train it if you want it to avoid certain things, but it does know some things on its own. How about the height? How do you adjust the height?
Oh yeah, so this cutting depth is adjustable. You can cut all the way from 1.2 inches up to 4 inches. So that's the height that you want to cut the grass. But it can handle very long grass without any problem.
Okay.
And of course, this deck is a floating deck. When you have uneven terrain, even for the traditional mower, if the terrain is uneven, sometimes you have a little bump.
It'll hit.
It can actually scalp.
Right.
But with ours, because it is a floating deck, and it can actually adapt to the curvature of the terrain. It leaves a very nice even cut.
How loud is it?
It's about 65 decibel. And when you're comparing to a traditional mower, this thing is almost ignorable. You can't hear anything when you're sitting inside the house. But if you're stand right beside it, you can hear it.
Right,
but it's not anything like the traditional that it can be super annoying.
How much area can it do on a charge?
So within a single charge, this thing can do up to 0.6 acres.
Okay.
0.6 acres within a single charge. If you charge it for 3 times a day during the day, because one charge can last for 3 hours.
Okay.
And it takes about 40 minutes to charge it to up to 90%. And if you charge it for 3 times a day, it can get up to 1.75 acres.
And will it go and recharge itself in between?
Fully automatic. Once it detects the low battery, it will just stop and go back to the charging station. Once the battery is fully charged, return back to where it left off.
Gotcha. I understand it's on Kickstarter still, but it's going to be going to retail soon. Tell me where you are with that.
Okay, so we launched in Kickstarter last year in October, and the Kickstarter is finished, but we're still in the late flight stage.
Okay.
You can still get it within Kickstarter, good wise for $19.99. Okay. And late in March, we're going to launch it in the market for retail for $29.99. Gotcha. It's going to be available both on our website and on Amazon.
Okay, and what's the website?
So it's Limo, limo.com. So you probably...
So just LOIMOW.com.
Yeah, .com.
Okay. Mandy, thank you so much for talking to us. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
What do you want to hear us talk about on the show? One way to let us know is in our subreddit. You can submit stories and vote on them at reddit.com/r/Daily Tech News Show.
We end every episode of DTNS with some shared wisdom. Today, Lamar Wilson has some advice for us regarding the potential TikTok shutdown in the U.S.
Hey, DTNS audience, Lamar Wilson here, veteran content creator. And with the TikTok ban approaching this weekend, I wanted to talk about some lessons to be learned from this. Now, many creators are panicking. Many will lose a significant chunk of their income. And of course, this is no time to twist the knife in that sense. And that's not what I'm doing here. But what can we as creators do in the future? Well, I think number one is not to keep all your eggs in one basket. Now, we have gone through this before with MySpace, with Google Plus, with Vine, with Twitter, and I'm sure this is not the end with TikTok. These sites come and go, and therefore it's wise to cross-post to multiple places as much as possible. Do not rely on one place for your content. I personally upload to TikTok, Instagram Reels, Instagram Threads, Facebook, YouTube Shorts, and Snapchat. One video everywhere. So one goes away and it's happening, and it's definitely sad. And I'm losing a lot of followers, but my business just doesn't disappear. Whether long form or short form, please make a plan now to choose at least 2 places your content can go and nurture that audience as best you can. This would at least help lessen the pain of any future losses. This is Lamar Wilson, veteran content creator, reporter for DTNS.
Timely advice, Lamar. Preach to the unconverted, my friend. And good to have you sending us a little report there. I really appreciate that. Big thanks to Mandy and Lamar Wilson for contributing to today's show. Thank you for being along for Daily Tech News Show. The show is made possible by our patrons at patreon.com/DTNS. DTNS has a live version called DTNS Live on YouTube and Twitch. You can find out details on that and more at dailytechnewsshow.com. Talk to you on Monday, everybody.
The DTNS family of podcasts, helping each other understand.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.